I'm not even a quarter of the way into my attempt to drive an insane 1,000-mile off-road trail through the UK. Driving alone with no support in my DIY Land Cruiser camper, these tracks have already pushed me to my absolute limits. And little did I know at this point, things are only just starting to warm up.
Yeah, something wrong with it.
Up ahead lay miles of insane flooded out tracks, bush repairs on the Land Cruiser, and a desperate Hail Mary that no overlander wants to have to attempt, trying to repair the ripped out sidewall of a tyre. That is not good. And this track still had more surprises to throw at me, with some of the deepest water crossings that I'd encountered so far.
That came way over the bonnet. That was totally insane.
When I built my vehicle, I set out with the intention to create one of the world's most capable 4x4 campers. Using a Land Cruiser 70 series as the base vehicle, which is one of the toughest 4x4s out there, I already had the 4x4 capability side of things well covered. But for long distance expeditions that were going to span months or even years, I knew I wanted the inside space and comfort on the road that only a camper can give you. And so, in one moment of madness, I chopped my trusty Land Cruiser and set about building the vehicle of my dreams. But the road to success was going to throw challenges my way that I could never have even imagined. After chopping the vehicle, I realised that I was in way over my head. I was learning everything that I was doing on the job. Coupled with the body chop and camper build, I was also doing a full mechanical rebuild after 3 long years on the Pan American Highway. All this was pushing my limited knowledge and skills every single day. Pair this with trying to work full time and also work on a house project simultaneously. What was initially meant to be a project with a 4-month turnaround morphed quickly into a 3-year ordeal that took thousands of hours, every minute of my spare time, and ended up cashing in at around 5 times over budget. This was the first time I'd attempted anything like this, and the design of the camper was made up on the fly. I pieced this thing together torturously slowly, and each phase of it came with its own disasters. I made mistake after mistake and had to rectify them all as I went. But slowly, as the months and years passed by, the camper began to take shape, and I kept on at it with dogged persistence. There were moments during this build that I wondered just what the hell I'd done, cloistered away from friends and family doing nothing but working on this thing for months at a time. But as it took shape and the countless hours that I put into this thing started to pay off, I realised that while yes, I was building my dream vehicle, I was also building a skill set that was going to serve me for life. From welding and woodwork to plumbing and electrics, not to mention deep mechanics on a 30-year-old vehicle. I had to learn it all to make my dream come alive. When I was in the thick of it, I was constantly wondering whether I'd made a dreadful mistake, with a nagging doubt in my mind that at some point I was going to hit a problem that I couldn't solve. But piece by piece, the vehicle slowly came together like a massive jigsaw puzzle, and I slowly learned to rely on the skills that I'd built up, and trust that I would be able to surmount any issue that came my way. And believe me, there were a lot of them. Ultimately, this was a project that pushed me to the edge, and there were more than a few times that I regretted even starting. But at the end of the day, it taught me patience and self-reliance, alongside a whole bunch of new skills. And of course, the end result was my dream vehicle, built to my exact specifications, with every detail curated perfectly to me and my needs on the road. With this build, I struck what I believe to be the perfect balance of superb off-road ability and all the comforts I need for living long-term on the road. And right now, I was putting my dream rig through its paces on the most brutal expedition I'd ever attempted, in which every aspect of this build, an overlander that I'd made with my own 2 hands, would be stress tested to the extreme. I was not even an eighth of the way into my attempt to drive 1,000 miles of off-road tracks through the UK. I'd just passed the 100th mile marker on my expedition, and after the absolute carnage of the last few days, 100 miles felt like a decent milestone to celebrate. I was heading into my 4th day of torrential rain down here somewhere in southern Wales. But despite the bleak weather, I was having a great time, throwing the cruiser into some of the best long-distance 4-wheel drive routes in the UK. The trail today was taking me on a winding route, cutting through a mixture of high moorland tracks and ancient drovers' routes through forested valleys. To make up my 1,000 miles of off-road driving, I'd plotted an extensive, often tortuously winding route that snaked its way through valleys and over mountains. The trail today had been generally quite easy, but occasionally it would throw out something that would cause me to stop in my tracks.
Oh my god, right, okay, right. Into it again then, I guess?
Out of nowhere, the right-hand side of this trail was completely washed out, pushing the cruiser over onto a dangerous angle. I checked my inclinometer as I eased through, and spotted that it read a 35-degree horizontal angle. The last time that I've been pitched over onto an angle like this, I'd inflicted the first real damage onto the cruiser on this expedition so far. As I eased gingerly through this, I could feel the side of the vehicle being dragged sickeningly against the embankment once again. As it levelled out and the threat of a rollover subsided, I made the decision that it would be better for morale just to keep going. For now, I didn't even want to know whether I'd added any damage to the side of the car. I was having a fantastic time throwing the cruiser into these overgrown trails, switching up easily between second and third gear in high range 4-wheel drive. These remote tracks were absolutely deserted and I hadn't seen anyone all morning. I guess the relentless downpour was keeping people in the comfort of their houses, but the bleak weather, fog and sheets of rain only added to the atmosphere out here for me. I knew that the trails that I was driving today were probably some of the oldest in the UK, dating back millennia to Roman times and beyond. Parts of the trail that I plotted and that I was driving today encompass sections of the ancient Roman route of St. Helen, a Roman road that had been built 2,000 years ago during the bloody Roman conquest of ancient Britain. I was pushing the Land Cruiser up a steep, rocky 4-wheel drive track, heading uphill and gaining altitude fast. With the old 6-cylinder diesel roaring at 3,000 RPM, the track started to plateau out, and the skeletal remains of an ancient building, some long forgotten old ruin, seemed to mark the beginning of a high-altitude moor, bearing silent witness to the comings and goings of travellers through this bleak, wind-blasted place for generations. I was pushing due north, in moorland located to the west of the Brecon Beacons National Park, a rugged and mountainous area in the south of Wales. I was following an ancient route built during the Roman occupation, which had served to connect two fortified outposts that the Romans had built during their push west in the British Isles, in order to garrison the area with troops and subdue the local tribes. Wales is a country rich in mineral wealth, and the Romans used the technology at their disposal to extract large amounts of gold, copper and lead from the very hills and mountains that I was passing through right now. As the Romans pushed through, they encountered fierce resistance from the local tribes, who did not just lay down and accept being made second-class citizens in their ancestral lands. The native people that once inhabited these lands were called the Silures, and they were documented by Tacitus, a Roman historian, as being a fierce and warlike tribe. Fascinatingly, Tacitus also observed that these people were of dark complexion with dark hair, which set them quite apart from neighbouring tribes, and he speculated that this people must have arrived from Spain via some kind of ocean passage at some point in ancient antiquity. Whatever their origins, this people, alongside their neighbouring tribes, fought a long and bitter battle against the occupying Romans that transformed from pitched battles to a decades-long guerrilla war, fought against the Roman legionnaires as they consolidated their grip on this land. In total, it took the Romans 29 years to conquer this tiny nation, and its people went down as some of the fiercest opponents of Roman oppression in history. Continued cutting across this high open, rain-lashed moor into the afternoon. I'd been driving for most of the day now, and the only other living souls that I'd seen were the sheep that scattered out of the way as I approached, scrambling over each other and darting through dry stone walls to get out of my path. I approached another farm gate. I'd lost count of how many I'd had to open today, but I estimated this must have been somewhere around the 50th. This one, however, seemed to mark a change in the terrain, and I could see on my area maps that I was about to enter a section of wild, unfettered moorland for many miles.
Get out, gate city like.
I pushed the Land Cruiser out onto the moor in high-range four-wheel drive. The track was pretty wide and gravelly, if undulating, and I soon found myself cracking along at decent speed, putting the suspension to work as the vehicle bounced up and down, cruising across this barren moorland track. As I reached the far side of the moor, I hit a section of heavily waterlogged marshland with deep waterlogged tie ruts. I threw the cruiser at it and the vehicle roared through, throwing out mud and water to either side. With that, the altitude dropped off and the trail took me into a heavily forested area with thick woodland encroaching on all sides.
Jesus Christ. Oh man, this car is getting some pinstripes like.
I continued forging through these heavily wooded tracks into the early evening. I've been travelling for the entire day now, and by this point I was pretty saddle sore, soaked through and weary from a long day on the road. My thoughts began to stray towards the idea of making camp, but the rain was still absolutely torrential. I had no desire to make camp in this, and the relatively high altitude up here meant that it was bone-chillingly cold and damp, so I decided that I'd just carry on until I found some more hospitable climbs. The torrential rain meant that the cruiser's windows were fogging up, so I was having to travel with my windows rolled down. The deluge meant that the sheer volume of water was finding its way in through cracks and crevices on the cab that I didn't even know were there.
Check this out, just pissing water through here. I don't know whether it's the seal of the windscreen or the FRP top, but yeah, either way, that is not good. Everything's soaked. Look at all this. Just like this wet.
The water coming in through the windscreen had now gotten into my phone's charging port, meaning I could no longer charge the device that I was using for navigation. This was soon going to present a serious problem for me.
There is water literally pissing through every orifice on this car right now. Like, I'm soaking wet from just sitting in the car.
Deluge aside, I was about to discover another reason why it isn't good to drive with open windows in dense woodland like this.
Ah, yeah, right in the face. Just got bitch slapped by a branch right through the window, man.
The route I plotted for my expedition was a winding one, and as a consequence of following the contours of valleys and hilltops, such is the nature of this route. And if you're going to attempt to drive 1,000 miles of off-road tracks inside the UK, you have to plan on doubling back on yourself a fair bit. These gravel tracks and unpaved roads were where I was making the majority of my progress on this trip, but every few miles the trail would throw out something interesting that would force me to slow down a bit.
This next one looks insane. This is like a slippery ass rock step with water cascading down it. Low 4 for this one, definitely.
I was headed back uphill towards another stretch of high moorland, and the ascent here was going to be defined by slick slabs and loose shale rock.
Holy shit.
With the cruiser in low 4, I let it roar up the steps, with the tyres spinning and sending rocks flying left and right in the wet.
Land Cruiser power, baby.
With just 15% of battery left on my phone that I was using to navigate, I was nervously glancing at its screen on the regular, aware that if I wasn't able to get some juice into this device pretty soon, I would no longer be able to navigate and thus would be forced to stop. As I traced the line of the trail with my eyes on the area maps, I noticed the words San Helen printed in block capitals on the trail that I was following. I realised that I'd finally reached and was now driving along a 2,000-year-old Roman road that had once connected fortifications and outposts in the wild western reaches of the very northern frontier of an ancient continent-spanning empire. As I pushed the vehicle along the Roman road, and my tyres bit into stone and dirt where Roman legionnaires' boots had once trod, I let the history and the gravitas of this place wash over me. In my mind's eye, I could see the armoured legionnaires marching along this very road, and I wondered what it must have been like to be one of those men, crossing this wind-blasted moor far from home, sent by their emperor to conquer for the glory of the empire. The gulf of time, 2,000 years between those days and the modern era, is difficult to comprehend, but driving along this road, a tangible object, left behind by those who'd gone before me, had me feeling a powerful sense of connection to these people for a brief moment in time. I wondered about the long-forgotten human stories that must have accompanied these people, the homesickness, the petty enmities, the laughs and jokes around a crackling campfire, the love and hate and tragedy in battles that always go hand in hand with human history, and the relics left behind from an ancient empire that stretched from Syria to Scotland, forever changing the world as we know it today, and ultimately all turned to dust. What must have felt at the time like the pinnacle of human civilization, now consigned to dusty books and manuscripts on the futility and failure of human endeavour. As I pushed alongside Helen, my philosophical ponderings were quickly interrupted by a persistent thumping noise from the back of the vehicle.
Oh shit, is that the roof doing that? Yeah, the roof is... Now, the roof's doing bad things.
The over-centre clamps that hold my roof down must have gotten caught on the branches of trees as I pushed through the forest earlier and gotten ripped off, leaving the pop-top roof unsecured and flapping up and down as I navigated the bumpy tracks.
That needs to be fixed like yesterday.
For the time being, I could strap the roof down with ratchet straps, but with both of the clamps looking like they were beyond repair, I knew this was likely to be a major inconvenience to me for the rest of the trip.
Yeah, that was really not good about the over-centre catches on there. I've got one spare in my spares box, but they're both really, to be honest. That means that without that, the roof is just going to bounce up and down continually forever.
As I went round the side in the pouring rain to strap the roof down, the extent of the panel damage on the side of the car caught my eye.
Holy man, look how bad this is, eh? I can't believe how bad that is, mate. I have another slight issue at the moment, and it's my leisure system is just not performing at all. I don't currently have a split charge system because the Cruiser's 24 volt, and I've been waiting to get a really good one, obviously from Red Arc, but I don't have one at the moment. Anyway, I kind of thought, well, this trip is in the summer, Northern Hemisphere, there's going to be plenty of sun. Even with cloud cover, you should usually get a bit of solar power. But because the cloud is so thick and the fog is so low, it's obviously not charging at all, and my power demand's pretty heavy, charging all these cameras and phones and navigation equipment and stuff. So my brand new leisure batteries are down to 12.3 now, which is basically drained out, and if I leave them like this, they're going to die 100%. So I think that I might have to find an actual campsite tonight where I can hook up and charge properly, because if it's going to be like this the next few days, I'm going to definitely can my leisure batteries fully again. So yeah, a bit of a gutter.
After cruising through open moors and dense forests for another hour or so, I pulled up to do a gate with an odd sounding rattle coming from underneath the Cruiser somewhere.
Yeah, I like the sound of that, but
I had a cursory look around the vehicle but couldn't spot anything obvious, so I went to open the gate. I went round the side to see if I could spot anything, but ultimately decided that the conditions were just too gross to do a proper inspection. Whatever I'd heard under the car would have to wait for now. I did, however, make time for another mournful look at the side of the vehicle, still a little taken aback at how brutal the damage there was.
That's fucking crazy, man. Kind of a bit gutted about the scratches on the car. I mean, there is an argument that they're just battle scars, but regardless, I kind of made this vehicle with my own two hands, and to see it take that kind of damage, something's not sounding good back there.
I quickly decided that I did indeed need to find the source of that noise, since it was sounding particularly vicious having turned the ignition back on.
Sounds like an exhaust issue. Yeah, there's something wrong with it. What's up with it? I can't. There's the bush giving out. It's hitting that regardless, isn't it?
I couldn't definitively pinpoint the source of the noise, but I suspected the rubber hanger bush that holds the exhaust in place.
Doesn't sound good, whether it. Yeah, I think that bush is giving out. That'll be the second one in as many years, but I think it's because that exhaust comes out at a kind of strange angle, slightly more unusual. It's really funny, this steel post is singing its own song. It's got a mouth there, got a mouth there, and the wind's hitting it just right, so it's singing quite a weird dirge. Freaky shit. Okay.
Thick rain clouds and fog descended on the moor as I continued pushing along the Roman road. Little did I know at this point that St. Helen was keeping its greatest challenge in reserve, just around the corner.
I think I better put this in low for, man. Wow, this is flooded as shit, dude.
As I pulled up to this obstacle, I knew it was something different to anything I'd tackled so far today. This junction on the track was completely flooded out, and with no way to gauge the depth, I knew I was just going to have to commit and hope.
Holy shit. Jesus Christ!
The cruiser had ripped through the flooded bog hole in low-range four-wheel drive, roaring up onto the opposite embankment, in water cascading down the steep four-wheel drive track on the other side. That had been unbelievably deep, submerging the cruiser's entire front end and whole exhaust system, sending plumes of steam up across the track, which mixed with the fog to further obscure visibility.
That was totally insane. That came way over the bonnet. Oh, this trail does not disappoint every single goddamn time. That's insane too. God, they're scary, powerful things.
In the next episode, we'll attempt a dangerous tyre repair abomination that has no natural right to exist. We'll explore remote, overgrown trails that haven't been driven in years. Get properly lost in the wild while chasing ghost trails.
Got myself well and truly lost here. I think this has been a trail at some point.
And end up backwards in a ditch, properly stuck yet again.
Oh, shit, man, I've ended up right in a ditch. God.